Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our 2025 Global Summit. And we're in the last session of the day, which is so hard to believe that, day one has just flown by. But we are here with two incredible young LGBTQ plus leaders, and I'm super stoked for our final session of the day. So our topic that we're going to be jumping into, we're talking about games. We just had such a lovely Minecraft session, which I agree. I'm like, I don't understand how Minecraft works. So every time I see somebody play it, I'm like, yeah, destroy all those flowers. I don't know what the alternative is. But our topic today is leveling up, how LGBTQ plus youth are fighting back globally. And the whole theme of today has been queer youth on the front lines. All around the world, we are seeing LGBTQ plus young people in a truly tremendous show of creativity and innovation, which is just going to be like my buzzwords for today, rising up to the challenges being presented politically, culturally, just at all of these different levels of society that LGBTQ plus young people are just like meeting the moment where it is. The courage and creativity that are being shown are antidotes to the challenges that we are experiencing, and the genuine care and working within these challenges to make sure that other LGBTQ plus youth are supported, loved, and are doing what it gets better. Our main mission is seeing that brighter future ahead. My name is Ariella Asseline. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the Senior Manager of Programs and Operations here at It Gets Better. A huge part of my work, which is some of the proudest work I've ever done, is overseeing our It Gets Better Changemakers program. For now, our fourth year, our newest grantees are being meticulously reviewed by our team, and I'm so excited to eventually share all of the incredible projects that are coming out with the world soon. But I am just so honored to be here with two change makers and two recipients of our grants. So I'll give you both your moments to shine. But just a little bit about the Change Makers program. What we do is really empower young LGBTQ plus people to look at their communities, identify a problem, and then come to us with a project plan to be able to remedy that. And these projects are just over the moon, like the coolest things in the world. We have youth summit leadership conferences where we have GSA leaders across their states, districts, schools come together and just have like these explosively beautiful moments of joy. So many different care closets, which are providing young trans people the opportunity to get resources for free where they might not be able to get that in a home environment. Just truly outstanding projects. So I'm so excited to be here with Liliana and Akiko. And I will give you both of you the opportunity to share a little bit about yourselves, but I'm just going to sing your praises a little bit. So Liliana is our current grantee for our It Gets Better Changemakers program from Idaho, who has the most incredible project. I love seeing all the photos, and when the project works with a lot of young people and also adults from schools and nonprofits, but typically, we have the adults that are running a program, but here we have a young person who, is running this ship from top to bottom, is overly, not overly communicative, but like so communicative, getting everything done, the most perfect reports. So it's just always such a pleasure to work with somebody who is not only so, organized, but has such a clear vision for the work that you're doing. And so I'm just so honored to have you here. And Akiko this is your second year as a youth voice, which is our flagship ambassador program. So we're so sad to see you graduate, but it's incredible to have worked with you for the last 2 years. You're such a bright light, so thoughtful in all of the work that you do. And last year was also a recipient of a Changemakers grant to do a queer prom, and it was in Iowa, right? That's where the prom was held. Yeah. So very to have the two of you here, both from two states that within the United States are facing your own challenges when it comes to political challenges, socio cultural challenges of just. I was thinking about the first session where from our It Gets Better Spain affiliate was talking about how the government might be supportive actually, but then the culture is not as supportive, and what an interesting challenge that might be. So that's enough about me yapping. I could go backstage just like, do you want us to talk for 45 minutes? And here I went. So I'm gonna get you two to start off. So first, would love a little bit of context before jumping into solutions. It's always helpful to have an idea of where we're coming from. So both of you, and I'll start with Liliana, you first. What are the challenges that your communities are facing? And just giving like a little bit of an idea of where you are, and then we'll circle back to how you fixed it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me on here. My name is Liliana. I use she, they pronouns. I live in Idaho. I've been born and raised there my entire life. And recently, over the last like 3 or 4 years, we've really seen a very large increase in anti-LGBTQ legislation and specifically anti-trans legislation. And as a trans person myself, this has made me very motivated to be more politically active, seeing the rights of myself and the rights of my friends and community start to slowly get taken away. A couple, like the first thing that we saw here was a sports ban for transgender athletes in high school that has been undergoing litigation for a few years. And then we have seen gender affirming care bans, as well as bans on accessing bathrooms for trans students in schools, pretty much across the board. We had a really rough year last year with, I think, about 10 anti-trans bills specifically passing through the legislature. Um, and one of the biggest issues we've had is getting the legislators to like hear our stories and understand where we're coming from, what we need, and actually like get that change implemented. So like I've been involved with testifying and working on trying to fight back against a lot of these oppressive bills, but there's a large push that is trying to pass these bills and is succeeding in passing these laws, which has made life significantly harder here for LGBTQ people, which has been kind of hard for me because I've grown up in Idaho my entire life and I've seen it as like this beautiful place. There's tons of nature. I love running outside, all this beautiful stuff about the state itself. But with the recent actions of the government, it's also made the culture in Idaho, similar to what Aria was saying about Spain. It's made the culture significantly less welcoming and friendly to the LGBTQ community. So that's my little snippet about Idaho.
Yikes. But
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. Akiko, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And Liliana, it's so nice to meet you. I've read about your like grants and like the work you're doing. It's really so incredible. In terms of myself, I currently am a student at Georgetown University, but as Ariel mentioned, lived in Iowa for 2 years. Actually moved there from Los Angeles, where I predominantly grew up. But 2 days before my junior year of high school, I did move to Iowa, which I think are very different places. And a lot of people are like, why did you move to Iowa? Isn't the only thing there corn? I'm like, there, we have so much corn. But it's actually, I really love living there, despite the fact that, kind of as Liliana has mentioned, there's this like increasing polarization that's just kind of encroaching on the like political and cultural landscape. But also, I think these two very different places of the very progressive, but also like kind of like massive metropolitan sprawl of Los Angeles compared to like the small town vibe of Iowa that I currently live in has really shaped how I kind of see community and also subsequently how I approach activism and my work with It Gets Better as a youth voice.
I love that. I'm so curious. I would love to hear a little bit about like what that change is, and now particularly like as a first year in university, maybe what you've been able to bring to your activist work there.
Yeah, no, I think something that really stood out to me when I moved. I was really nervous to move actually because obviously read the headlines, read about the book bans, and read about the like sweeping anti-trans legislation. And we have a very conservative governor, But actually, what surprised me, kind of conversely to what Liliana was saying and what you, Ariella, were saying with the individual in Spain, was that even though our government I found to be very conservative and very polarized, a lot of the people still retain the willingness and desire to have this kind of communication. One example that I think really epitomizes that experience is I went to this sort of like summer program with peers, like high school peers from across the state of Iowa. And I kind of went in expecting that it would be very similar to what a lot of the, like, there's a lot of the adults in the room was backed by the state government. And so it was a lot of very conservative adults. And it was very clearly not particularly welcoming to like LGBTQ individuals. And I kind of went in, part of the program was giving a speech. We were like running for mock government kind of thing. And at first I was going to do something very like like very, like something very like chill. But actually, a mentor gave me very good advice that to like say what you believe in, not just what you think others will agree with. And it kind of opened up this conversation to be able to communicate more. And like people came out to me privately afterwards. People who didn't agree, but we like actually had a conversation. And so I think it's really shown me that like people are different than legislation, and like people pushing legislation are different from the community members. And so I think going to university, I've kind of like taken that a little bit with me and seen that like, okay, yes, there's these big scary headlines, but also there's lots of people who are just kind of disengaged, and if you talk to them, they're more willing to have that conversation.
That is so, I love that, like, advice, like, don't say just what you think people believe in. I think that was a similar, I was a creative writing major in or minor in college, and that was like the best writing advice I ever got was don't write, like, you might think to write a piece that's going to be impactful to write something universal, but really it is like the hyper specific of your own life that people are able to really latch onto and glean something from. So I feel like a little similar piece of that, like, you are the activist that people are looking towards your voice to see what you have to say, and whether or not everybody agrees with it, you will be providing some sort of yeah, like, nugget of information. And I'm thinking about what you started with about, I'll never forget that when I read the book Real Queer America by Samantha Allen, which I know, it's a few years old at this point, so who knows that the communities that are being talked about are really representative of it, but or similar to what she wrote about. But it's about, young or like queer communities across red America, and seeing, that we might have these ideas of what a red state might look like or a red community might look like. But like you were saying, really getting in and talking to the people there, it's such a different reality. And what is happening at the governmental level is not necessarily representative of what the people might believe in. Liliana, I'd love to jump over to you and talking about your project and, how what you came to the table with to be a change maker, how it was like addressing some of the specific challenges that you were talking about. Also, anytime I hear books, I have the picture in my mind of your project. So I can't wait to talk more.
Yeah, of course. We applied for the grant last year, and it was toward the end of our legislative session, which ended in about April of 2024. And that was after like a lot of our community had come through fighting, not very successfully, a lot of the anti-LGBTQ legislation. And for me personally, I kind of like seeing the strong resistance to our community that is in our government right now, and the strong conservative force that is there, made me kind of want to shift my focus. So when I saw the opportunity to apply for the grant, I got really excited because I realized that like one of the most important things that we can be doing right now is focusing on community work and building community and making sure we're taking care of each other. So that was really the overarching goal with this grant that we applied for, was to create this permanent LGBTQ plus student safe space in my high school that would just be in the library and be open and free to all students to use at all times, and just have that constant reminder of queer joy that I felt like we all needed, especially right now. And this kind of came in a different little initiatives, as I kind of like to call them. We, as Aria mentioned, we bought a ton of LGBTQ books, which is something that I nerded out over because I am a huge book fan. So I just got to go through and find, I think we got about 150 new LGBTQ books for our library, and got them all set out within the library. And one of our biggest ideas, or things that we tried to like debate back and forth on, is how to display the books. Because one of the things that we were working through was a book bill that passed that allowed books to be pulled for having homosexuality in it. And so our decision was that we just, with the books that we bought, we put them throughout the library. We didn't make a specific LGBTQ section. We wanted to make sure the books were super accessible and easy to access for anybody, even if you're questioning or just want to read a cute romance novel, because who doesn't from time to time? But beyond that, we just wanted to create that permanent community space. And seeing, I personally love the mission of It Gets Better, which is kind of like an inspiration for our project, like helping youth remember that we do have a future and that there is hope. And so for our opening event, we were able to bring in the author Aidan Thomas, who wrote Cemetery Boys and Sunbury Trials, all those cool books. And they did a really amazing virtual talk with us. I got to talk about their experiences and how they kind of like work through their tough times through writing and creating those different perspectives and experiences, which again was a really crucial reminder to a lot of our community that we do have a future and that we do have hope and that we can live our authentic lives despite all of the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric that is out there. And so yeah, we have this now permanent community space that is right in the middle of our library, right by the window so that everybody can see it, right by our school's pride flag. Yeah, it's been really popular. I know a lot of people have found a nice little home there.
I love that. Yeah, and like I said, like, I think about the photo that you sent of just, like, the beams of light coming through these windows into this space, and I do think about, I think it was Alex, also from It Gets Better UK, at the beginning of the first session, where he was talking about, the arc of what it means it gets better, of, that we could look at it and say, like, "Oh, does it get better? Like, things look so much worse now," or like, governments are so hard, it's becoming so challenging. And he was talking about how, when he went to first started going to Pride, there was such a generational divide of who was attending Pride. And now Pride is full of young queer people who are going there, or people going with their families, or, all this type of stuff. And I do think about that idea of like having a queer section of books, or having like a queer little area in a library, to have it be in full sunlight, like fully in the center, right there, visible and able to be enjoyed by everybody. A few years ago might have just been like a dark little corner somewhere that like has like a hidden rainbow sticker, maybe. So I think about that, and just like the general arc of it getting better, that we're getting there, even if sometimes it might not seem it in the grand scheme, to have these little moments of remembering. And we can't talk about queer joy without talking about a queer prom. So Akiko, I'd love to hear a little bit about that and what that was like.
Oh yes, no, that was such a cool experience. I think especially like yes, like in Iowa, in like a kind of red state, I guess in the recent election, and I think one thing that was like it was so cool, like you were saying, Ariella, to be able to see all of these queer kids, and we're just like we had it at my school as part of like our normal prom kind of thing, kind of similar to what Liliana was saying in that it wasn't we didn't want it to just be like one kind of sectioned off area, little thing, but like having this like immersive within the student body. And so I think what was really my favorite part was being able to coordinate between like the GSA and different like clubs within campus. Our school called it like an inclusive prom, where it was just trying to include as many people as possible. We had had a open closet where we had different like tuxes and dresses and as many sizes we could possibly attain. we had Mac Cosmetics was lovely enough to come to very far to our little town and do people's makeup if they wanted, so that they could really feel like they were expressing themselves however they wanted to for the night. Um, they played some like music that was like from like queer artists. I think it was just like this really wonderful experience to feel like everyone was kind of like living out loud, and like not like it was like some like sort of like little like specific thing, but just kind of this like broad open night. Kind of to like Ariella, your point about things just like gradually getting better. This arc, I think, is very true, and that like we see, ups and downs, but that it's like slowly improving. I think one thing that was interesting of working with because we worked with my school district, which meant that it was kind of difficult to at points to work within the school legislation. And so I was actually curious, Liliana, how with your current grant you've been navigating with like with the library and just the different legislation imposed on education currently.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That I honestly was pretty nervous about that when I started working the grant, because with all the legislation, I was kind of worried that it was going to seep down into the school culture, which, as I was saying before, the anti-LGBTQ legislation has definitely been affecting the culture of Idaho. But the school that I go to is in this nice little blue bubble, where they are very protective of their LGBTQ students. And so I worked specifically with our school's administration. I didn't work much with the school district itself, but the school administration was just over the top, so excited to be like helping out in any way they could with this project to support their LGBTQ students, especially during a time when they felt like their hands were kind of tied on how much they could support their students with the legislation. Um, and so it was a lot easier than I was expecting, because I came into it with a little bit of anxiety, like, oh, is this gonna work out? Like, is this gonna be like a constant uphill battle type thing? But the administration was lovely throughout the entire process.
That's so cool. We love supportive administration. That's amazing. Ariel, actually, I'm actually very curious. Has your I know you've been overseeing these changemaker grants for 4 years. You mentioned. Have you seen like a shift in difficulty over the past 4 years, or maybe getting easier or more difficult for grantees with different changes in legislation?
That's such a good question again. It's interesting because I feel like when we first started out, that was like I feel like year 1, it could have been like the learning curve on our end. I'll talk a little bit more about it. Like, we've gotten scrappy and creative also as an organization to giving out grants of just trying to, we shifted from the first 3 years, it was 50 states, 50 grants, 5,000 voices. And the ethos was, we're trying to get into schools specifically to address change there and happen with young students. So trying to figure out, like you were saying, Liliana, it just made me laugh thinking about it. That, like, I think one of the biggest takeaways I had was every single school and district is different, and not in a way where it's like we're all different, but like the policies are very different, and it's intriguing. And so I do encourage like any young person who like might have an idea that, or like a project to change your school or environment, what you might think, kind of like what you were saying, Liliana, you might think you have an uphill battle ahead of you, but you might be surprised that you might not. And at least I think that that's what I've seen over the course of the first 4 years of this grant is year 1, we had a few grantees where, there was a school in Utah that was just really so challenging. And I feel like I see a little bit of the student leader in the both of you, that like they were just trying and trying so hard to make this work. And they were coming up actually on a battle that they couldn't overcome. And that was okay. It was a learning experience for all of us. And we were able to take the grant funds and put it back into Utah, into different communities there, just to make sure that, young queer people there were not that they were awarded the grant. And just because a certain school was not willing to accept it doesn't mean that those students there don't need it, and they work their butts off to get it, so they should be able to get those funds into their own communities. So I do feel like, kind of like the conversation that we've been having, it has become easier, I think, for students, for supportive administration, supportive teachers, allies, to get around the policies that might be in place that could seemingly like look like they're going to shut down types of like LGBTQ plus affirming um, projects or care in their schools or in their communities. And yeah, I love that question because now I'm reflecting on it that like, yeah, like I do think it's gotten much easier for these funds to not only be accepted by the schools, because there's like the whole like financial legal part that's curious, but also we haven't had an issue, knock on wood, like recently of a grant project being awarded, they start working on the funds and they just are coming up on red tape or coming up on an unsupportive environment. That hasn't really happened since year one. So, I feel like that was a question I was gonna ask the 2 of you, Akiko, with you being like a youth voice for the last 2 years, and then Liliana, it's so wild for me to think about these grant projects happening really over the course of 2 calendar years, that, like, you applied for this grant last like, a year ago. Like, what has it looked like? Maybe I wanna start with you, Akiko, just, like, as, like, a culture thing, and then Liliana, we can talk more about, like, schools of yeah, what changes have you noticed over the last 2 years in not only the culture, but also specifically how LGBTQ plus youth are either, like, fighting back or getting creative or, like, rising up to meet the moment where it is?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question because especially because there's so many challenges we're facing right now that it's easy to get bogged down. So I think it's also really important to think like how we can move forward from this moment. And to me, like youth-led resistance is doesn't have to be like this like a big like protest or headline. It can also be like kind of these quiet moments, like registering to vote, reading the news, like keeping up with the news, or maybe taking a break from the news, like just checking in with your friends, making sure they're okay after legislation, that kind of thing. I think that like especially in right now, like hope is this very fragile thing. But I think the most important thing is to remember that we're not in isolation in this. Like even though it can feel like, in our town, especially like in a red state or in our school, we're alone. I think in like technology, like moments like this, it gets better, like change makers where we're connecting across um, just boundaries. As youth voice, I've had the opportunity to like get to meet and talk with like youth LGBT youth like all across the US and a couple even in Canada, and it's all these very different experiences. But I think if we can remember like, okay, even if we're not talking to them, even if we like aren't directly interacting with them all the time, like we're all kind of in this together and we don't have to hold all the hope by ourselves. Like we can each hold these like little shattered pieces of hope together for each other, and like that's enough, and we can move forward with that.
Oh my God, you just stole my answer like right out of my mouth. That was amazing. That's one of the biggest things that I've noticed too is like how specifically LGBTQ youth have been like kind of banding together and taking care of each
Mhm.
other in this moment, and making sure that we have the support that we need when we don't feel that from our government or from the outside culture. One of the big things I've noticed, like cultural trend at my school, with this grant, is I've seen more like teachers and students like almost come out of the woodwork as being strong supporters of LGBTQ youth. Which has definitely been a refreshing surprise. One of our initiatives with the grant was to buy like these little "Everyone is welcome here" signs, to give out to teachers for free, because our state did pass a ban that would or ban teachers from displaying pride flags in their classrooms. So we need to have an alternative way for them to show their support for their students and show that it is a safe space. And when I was passing these out to teachers, I would go into classrooms of teachers that I'd never known or teachers that I had heard, like, oh, they might not be super supportive. And after having like a quick conversation with them, they were like, yes, I would love to have one of these signs. Like, thank you so much for doing this. Those like little moments kind of like help with that fragile hope, like Akiko was saying, showing that we do have a lot of support and that kind of this really big polarization over LGBTQ rights is pushing a lot of people, specifically within our school's culture, to supporting us as opposed to going the other way.
I I'm just like sitting and basking in the 2 of you and your responses, and a line from one of my favorite, like, Mary Oliver poems comes to mind where it's like, "Joy is not to be made a crumb," and both of you, I feel like, are really, like, taking that to heart of just yeah, like, these moments are not to be made as something to just, like, assume that they're going to happen again or just, like, to ignore them, that the 2 of you really seem to be basking in these moments of joy and in these, like, realities of joy, and I yeah, I'm just, like, I'm really struck with this idea that the narrative might be things are so bad, everything is so hard, and, like, yes, like, I'm not trying to invalidate that that is the truth and that, like, on paper, things are exceedingly challenging, and we have to we can't sit back for a single moment and just think like, "Oh, well, it'll get better." Like, in that way, like, it'll sort itself out. Like, no, we have to be very active participants in change, and also to just, like, have these moments to realize and hold that truth of like you said, like, those teachers are there, and maybe they've been there the whole time, and here is an opportunity for them to actually step up to the plate and show who they really are, and it fills me with so much, like, hope and gratitude and just, like yeah, just joy for humanity to just be like, hopefully in these hard times people will show who they truly are and to just hear that like you're having these examples of that happen and that like at your queer prom that you're gonna have a bunch of kids like I do like while I love the idea of like having a prom separate from everybody it's just like obviously it's like a safe space for young queer students to be themselves to also have it integrated with everybody to be like we are not going to be somewhere separate we are going to be like loud and proud and all together is so beautiful. And so I really thank you both for sharing those examples. Um, I feel like it just like we're gonna take it on that hope train. I would love to know, um, like what hope do you have for LGBTQ plus youth in this moment of time, like both as like individuals or just like as a movement, as something that like you would want for LGBTQ plus young people to know either as like a moment of hope, what they can do, anything along those lines. That was a big question.
I would definitely say, like the biggest thing for me is that resistance for LGBTQ youth can come in many forms. Like us showing who we are and being our authentic selves is an act of resistance in and of itself. Like just living our lives and not like letting the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric kind of like overwhelm us and consume us. Instead, we're understanding that that's happening and not letting it affect how we're going to present who we are. I think that kind of like Hiko was saying, like it can be anything like checking in on somebody that you care about, or whether it's like sending a simple email to a legislature, like sharing your story, whether or not they're going to be receptive of it. But there's so many different ways to get involved, like educate yourself, or take time for self-care. All these different moments that can definitely be individual acts of resistance, even if they don't seem like it at first.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I don't want to play like echo, but I think like showing up for yourself in like a quiet way is like just as important in showing up for yourself in a loud way kind of thing. And that like in the meeting that like just like even if no doing I guess like being yourself even if no one else notices kind of thing like doing what you believe in no even if like it's like even if it can only be this quiet thing that like no one else is aware of and that's like that resistance is okay and that resistance is good and that resistance is where it starts and it's how we keep going even when it's really hard like sometimes we can't move forward necessarily in the moment all we can do is keep going and so if we can keep going long enough I think that's will eventually be moving forward.
I love that. And yeah, it reminds me, I'm just coming up, I have quotes coming to mind from what you're saying of just like, don't fight back, fight forward, of just exactly that idea. It's like, we can't keep looking behind us or, wishing that it was different. I think that some of the greatest strengths of LGBTQ plus youth and, the benefit of youth overall of just there isn't this huge expanse of time to look past to say like, "Oh, I wish it was better 10 years ago, wherever it was. You were like, I was, I don't know. You're both, I think, like older than this, but like, you're like, I was 4 years old then. I don't know. Sure, I wish it was better. I wish it was like that, but I don't have that context. So like the joy of youth is being able to say like I accept the current moment where it is because this is what I know. And in that acceptance, you're able to do exactly that, like fighting forward. It's not just going, looking back and reminiscing. It's being able to be inspired by the current moment and keep moving. Yeah, keep moving the needle forward. And I just think that that youthful perspective, youthful optimism is exactly like I was saying earlier, like it's the antidote to what is happening right now because you have a lot of people, they're all adults in charge and they're all doing things that are extremely questionable and suspect. And even just like the ethos behind how they're doing those things is questionable and suspect. But the perspective that the two of you have shared today is just so valuable in this, just like, yeah, in the moment, focusing on these like joyful things and being so creative and in your communities. Liliana, you said earlier that taking care of each other through community and really, yeah, focusing on that. I was like, I think that's my takeaway from today of just, yeah, focusing on that part that you can't give from an empty cup and taking care of yourselves. Like you were saying, Akiko, like showing up for yourself, even if no one notices. That is filling your own self reserve so that you can go out there and make the world a better place. I love talking about this and I love the perspective that we're all sharing today. I have just a couple more questions, and one of them is going to be like a cute little soundbite moment because I love that. So my first one before we get into that little soundbite is you two might have mentioned it already, but when you think of it, like within the last year of working with your communities, working with your friends, being with your family, whatever it is, a personal moment. Like, do you have a moment that comes to mind that is just like pure LGBTQ plus like youth joy or like triumph? Is there anything that just comes to mind as one of those moments?
I think for me, this is not in the past. This is like not necessarily past year, but I think it was a really like the shifting moment for me. I was, it was at this like LGBTQ like sort of like camp kind of thing. And it was when I was first kind of sort of like had just come out and was still kind of unsure of what I, like who I was and who I wanted to be. And I just remember we were like, it was like it had started to rain and it was like pouring and we were just like a bunch of like LGBTQ kids like in the forest dancing in the rain to Bohemian Rhapsody. And I was like, this is so chaotic and this is so joyful. And that's all it is, I guess, is that it's like not about like identity or not about politics or not about anything that like seems to be talked about in the media. It's just about being happy and being together.
I have a super similar story. We were actually having one of our Gender and Sexuality Alliance meetings in our new community space a couple weeks ago, and we were playing a game of charades. And we were just like had everybody write their own like little charades entry. And there was at one point when Chapel Roan was being acted out, and so they immediately broke into the hot to go dance. And like we all just like were screaming Chapel Roan and started doing it and singing along. And it was just like this similar moment of just like queer joy of us just getting to be ourselves and play a funny game and laugh together without the pressure or judgment that we felt in other aspects of our life.
Hey, oh, please.
That's so cute. I was gonna say, I think some very similar to that. At, like actually, the LGBTQ kind of centered prom that we had like they played like "Hot to Go" and like it was like the entire like large like auditorium doing the like HOT like they dance and it's like oh my gosh like and there was like tractors outside. I was like this is like so it's so like the juxtaposition was just so excellent and so joyful.
Totally. I just like it's this moment of I don't even know how to articulate it really, where it's just like we are all obviously everybody's their own person. Everybody like has multiple different identities that they hold. And also the people that are being like the figures that are being talked about in politics or that we are actively trying to like educate and work against, they're they're creating and they're like afraid of a image that does not exist, like that is not a real person. Like the real people are exactly the people that you two were talking about. And I think about this with the change makers. A portion of the application is submitting a video, and it's my favorite thing in the whole wide world. And I do like you like look at these videos and they're like 13 to 18-year-old kids. And I think a lot of people forget what, or like, you know, a lot of legislators, and I forget what like a kid looks like and what a kid sounds like and what a kid like does. And it's so, like you said, like it's just so joyful to be able to observe that, where you're like, oh, this is not this, you know, thinking about like a sport ban of just like, this isn't this person who is trying to like usurp everybody and like challenge everything. They're like, no, they're a kid that's trying to play like, that's trying to run with their friends, or trying to read a book in the library that's just a good story that might feature an, you know, a crush that they also like. But more likely than not, they're just trying to, you know, find somebody who also watches the same anime that they like. And those are coming out at a rate I can't understand anymore. But yeah, I really appreciate the two of you sharing that, those little moments of just like what it's like to be like a young queer kid. So, you know me, I got to get my little soundbite moment. And the whole theme of today has been leveling up. So I'll go first to just give you an idea of what we're going to do, but you're going to finish the sentence. LGBTQ plus youth are leveling up by, and mine is that LGBTQ plus youth are leveling up by meeting the current moment with creativity, innovation, and I'm adding this little part because of you two, extreme joy. So thank you both so much for, yeah, inspiring this conversation. And please, whoever wants to go first.
Oh, I can see us like both going off of
Yes.
mute at the same time. um, I'll go first. LGBTQ youth are leveling up by refusing to hide who we are and finding moments of joy with our community while taking care of ourselves.
Lovely. LGBTQ plus youth are leveling up by connecting to ourselves, connecting to each other, connecting to our futures, and holding hope together.
Oh, goodness. I love this so much. Thank you both. Truly, like from the bottom of my heart, from the bottom of everybody at It Gets Better. You two are, you know, we talk about change makers, we talk about youth voices. And I think that the two of you just like really hold those identities as not only just, you know, programs that you applied to, but truly embodying what it means to be a young queer person who is learning, taking care of themselves, taking care of their communities, being innovators. And it is just like one of the greatest joys of being, you know, I'm not a queer elder. I feel like I have to deserve that one a little bit longer, but like being an adult working with young queer people, just seeing how much further you'll go. And I have no doubt that the, you know, passion and like care and ethics that you two show in all of your work are just going to absolutely change the world in every little way. So it's such a pleasure being here to talk to you two. Thank you both so much for all of your work, for taking the time to talk with me. Um, yeah, I'm just really so proud of everything and so sad that our time together, both on this panel and also with your time as It Gets Better current grantees and youth voices, is coming to an end this year. But yeah, do you two have any last things before I wrap us up?
Just thank you so much. You all are both so amazing. Your work is just inspiring, and I'm so glad I could be here and learn from both of you in this talk.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great to meet you, Akiko. I know when I was like going through the grant process, learning about your prom was such an inspiration as well. So thank you so much for holding this space and for letting me share what we're doing.
Yay! And that brings us to the end of day one of our 2025 Global Summit right here on Twitch. I can't believe, like I started this off with, but I can't believe there were 3 sessions and we're already done. So meet us back here tomorrow on Twitch, and we'll be streaming 3 more incredible sessions. The theme of tomorrow will be building community in Latin America. And if you speak Spanish or can understand Spanish, this is the time for you. So much of our programming will be in Spanish tomorrow. Um, and I just love to plug, gotta plug all things It Gets Better. So go to itgetsbetter.org for all of our resources. You can learn a little bit more about our It Gets Better changemakers. So you can learn about past projects and keep an eye out for current grantees information coming out soon later this summer. It'll be very exciting to welcome in the new class. And if you're inspired by both of these young people and you think that you want to be, if you want to be a youth voice, applications are open right now. So if you go to itgetsbetter.org, the application period is open for another month. So we just started out a couple days ago. Apply. We would love to be able to share your voice as a youth ambassador. And Akiko, can you vouch? Good program? Thumbs up, thumbs up.
Yes, apply. It's so much fun. You meet so many cool people.
Yes. Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity, and we're really excited to welcome in the next class. And of course, if you are an LGBTQ plus young person and you are struggling in any way or just want to learn a little bit more about how to manage those things, IME.guide, IMI.guide is a phenomenal science-backed tool that is online. And Akiko, I don't think you were part of the class that was part of the backing science portion of it, but another wonderful resource that was informed by our youth voices and is such a fantastic way to learn about your queer identities, how to manage stress, how to manage being stigmatized against. So that is part of the taking care of yourself that we've been talking about in this. Uh, so thank you both again so much. It is always such a pleasure to talk to you. And, if we have I was about to say if you have any questions, but I'm like, that's not the type of meeting that this is. It's just kind of, when you hang up the phone and you're like, love you, because you're talking to your mom, but it's actually your boss that you just hung up and said that to. That was my response there. But thank you both so much. And yeah, we'll wave off, Princess Wave to the audience. Thank you all for watching. Bye.